Hello, stitching friends. Happy February. This is Sissy Bailey Smith of Gentle Pursuit Designs. I want to talk with you a little bit about framing and about, of course, Scottish samplers. So I hope you have a little time to spend with me. First of all, I wanted to show you this little framed piece by Phoebe Peyton from 1727. We're going to talk about Sarah Ann Boyd in just a minute. Sarah Ann was pitifully framed. The frame fell apart when it arrived, and the sampler was in very colorful, but it had been folded and it had been nailed to a board, and it had stains, and it really needed some conservation. So I sent it to the wonderful Julia Brennan, Caring for Textiles in Washington, D.C. And when it came back, oh, Sarah, I just can't wait to show her to you. And I'll tell you a little bit about Sarah Ann as well. But when she came back, she needed to be framed. So I took her to Rains Gallery, which is right here in Summerfield. And I needed, here's Phoebe. Phoebe, sorry about the glare. Oh my gosh, it's worse than I thought. Phoebe had no little hanger on the back of her frame, so I had her on a stand and decided it was time to take her in and get a little hangy thing on the back. And when I did, I took Sarah Ann to be framed, and I brought Phoebe in as well. And Ginger Rains noticed that the glass was right on top of the sampler. Of course, I hadn't noticed that, but I asked Ginger to take Phoebe apart and replace any materials that needed it with conservation materials. This is, I think, my oldest sampler. It was made in 1727. And Ginger took it apart, and she said that there were conservation materials used, so that was good. And the glass was museum quality, so that was good also, good to know. And she put spacers between the actual linen and the frame so that Phoebe will not be damaged by moisture being collected in there. And so that's what I wanted to tell you about, to please check your antique samplers. I know when mine arrive, if they look like they're okay, I don't want to fiddle with them. Of course, if I'm reproducing one, I might take it apart so I can see the back. But otherwise, if they're framed, I tend to leave them alone. But now I will check to be sure that the linen of the sampler isn't sitting right up on the glass, because that can cause moisture problems and staining and other issues. So that's my tip about framing. And I'll find a place for Phoebe to hang on the wall out of the sunlight soon. I'm sorry about the reflections, but anyway, I want to show you Sarah Ann. So let's see what we're going to do. We're going to look at Sarah Ann, and then I might see if I can set her in the china cabinet behind me rather than the floor. Charlie is sitting on my feet under the table right now. Those of you who don't know Charlie, he is a fabulous dog. He's 120 pounds of fun. He looks like a red Bernese mountain dog. He is a Bernedoodle, which is funny for him. The name is so silly, but his mom was 50% Standard Poodle and 50% Bernese Mountain Dog, and his dad was a Bernese Mountain Dog. And he's the only red one that the small family breeder has ever had. But he's very sweet, and he's sitting on my feet right now. So hopefully he'll stay put. But let's look at Sarah Ann. I want to tell you her story, and then I want to look at some Scottish samplers, including a sampler that I have recently purchased that, I mean, I was gobsmacked when I saw it available. So we'll talk about that. But first, let's look at Sarah Ann. Let me get her up off. She's so big. I put her here on the floor. Excuse me, Charlie. Let me get her out from under the table. Oof. Okay. Like I said, she's a big girl. So I'll let you look at her. She's a 10 Commandment sampler. I'll just kind of scroll her in front of my iPad. Sarah Ann Boyd. The colors were just beautiful, unexpectedly so, especially since there was staining and the sampler had been folded up and tacked to a board and all of these other things. But there she is. Let's see if I can set her behind me. Isn't she beautiful? Seriously. Look at those colors. So now I am blessed to have 8 10 Commandment samplers. And I'll show you another one in a second. But let's set Sarah Ann over here where she'll be safe, I hope. There. That looks good. Okay, so so Sarah Ann was 10 in 1833 when she made this beautiful sampler. Let's see. I sent her, as I said, to Julia M. Brennan, Brennan, Caring for Textiles. When I purchase a sampler and I think it's going to need conservation, I think, oh no, because it is not inexpensive, but I feel like I am the caretaker of these samplers. And some of them are just virtually rescue samplers that I know it's going to be costly to get them to where they should be, but I do it anyway. And Sarah Ann was one of these. So the sampler is 23 inches wide and 17 3/4 inches high. Julia gave me an estimate of what would be needed, and then I sent the sampler to her, and then she confirmed that. But it was so worth it. I was terribly pleased. As you can see, they have hand-stitched the sampler to fabric that is all acid-free, on acid-free mountings with conservation, everything, and it's just amazing. Nicola taught me how to put in pictures and everything, but I kept forgetting that. But what I should do is put in a before and after photo. I'll see if I can manage that. No promises. But let me tell you a little bit about Sarah Ann. So, I looked and looked to try and find her, and the only Sarah Ann Boyd that I found in Ancestry.com and FamilySearch.org that seemed most likely was the one who was born to William Boyd and Anne on June 8, 1823 in York, England. I love my Scottish girls because they give me lots of hints. Sometimes I still can't find them, but I have a much better chance than having no parental names or initials at all. Anyway, the Sarah Ann Boyd that I found, her mother's name was actually Anne King before she married William Boyd. And I saw records of Sarah Ann showing, there's her family right here. And the records show that she was a milliner. So a milliner, what does that involve? milliner. I always think of hat making, but it can be various other seamstressy sort of things. So at the age of 15, she was listed as a milliner. Her father was born in Scotland, and he is listed as a millwright. And her brother George, who was 20, was also a millwright. She had a younger sister named Elizabeth and other children. So let's look at this. So Sarah Ann is 15, her brother George is 20, her sister Elizabeth is 13. She has a younger sister named Margaret who's 10, James is 5, and Jane is 1. The only other record that I could find of Sarah Ann after this 1861 census showing that she was a milliner was when she was living with her niece and nephew. And she was still listed as a milliner. So that's very interesting to me. It's so odd that, you know, sometimes you can find everything about one of your sampler girls and other times nothing at all. And then you think, yes, I found her. And as you travel through the years, that's it. You know, you can't find another thing. So this is the 1841 census, and this is the one that shows that Sarah was 15. It also says her sister Elizabeth was 15, but I found out later Elizabeth was 13. So there she is. Her father was born in Scotland. They were living, Sarah Ann was born in Yorkshire, England. So there you go. And then in 1851, I see her at 27, and she's still living with her parents, and her younger sister Elizabeth, who's 25, and brothers William, 17, and Jane, 12, are still living together with their parents, and they're living in still in Yorkshire. And then the 1861 English census is the one showing that Sarah Ann is living, let's see, Sarah Ann is living with the Collinson Isle family. And she's 34. And there are lots of other people living there with her. And then, let's see, which is it? 61. I don't see anyone like that there. Okay. Oh, I see. I've just traced that family through the years. So it's great to know that Sarah Ann Boyd was 10 in 1833. I think I found her family, but she didn't leave me any initials of family members, so I can't be sure. But she is gorgeous and has been beautifully restored by Julia Brennan of Caring for Textiles, and beautifully framed by Ginger Rains of Rains Gallery. So let's see, what else did I want to talk about today? All right. So I want to talk a little bit about Scottish samplers. And I'm going to tell you a bit about this one. This is a sampler by Margaret Walker, who lived in Cloybank, which I found to be an estate in Scotland. So let me show you the sampler, and I want you to think about the complexity of the sampler. Okay, here we go. So it's a red and green wool sampler. Where's all that light coming from? There's her name. She was 8 years old in 1837 when she stitched this. So, red and green wool sampler on a very simple, very uneven sackcloth looking background. Very simple crowns, but look, between the crown and the initial, she has Mr. or Mrs., and then she has other family members probably with Mr. or Mrs. So that helps us when we are searching for a sampler maker, because we can look at the possible parents' initials and see if we can get a match. But what I want you to see, and we'll talk a little bit more about Margaret, but let's look at this. Look, at first glance, the sampler seems so simple, but look again and you'll see that she has a cross-stitch alphabet, a four-sided alphabet, both capitals. She has a lowercase alphabet, an Algerian eyelet alphabet, and look, she has another alphabet that has all the Scottish curlicues on it, double running stitch. She has 3 double running stitch bands, a band of Algerian eyelet, or there's another Algerian eyelet, another one. She has a herringbone band, and she has several different patterns of cross-stitch bands, and then a strawberry border. Of course, the strawberry border is the most often seen border in all samplers. But I just thought that was so interesting because the sampler seems so simple at first glance. And she was only 8 years old when she did it. But it just surprises me that you have to really look closely at these samplers when you are evaluating them to see if it is a sampler that you want to purchase and if you have a chance of finding it. Well, so Margaret tells us she was 8 in 1837. So I figured she was born around 1829, and she was living in Cloybank when she completed the sampler. Love, love, love it when they tell us where they lived. She has prominently included initials under crowns with Mr. or Mrs. under each one, indicating whether the owner of the initials was a male or a female. If my research is correct, and I have reason to believe it is, the TW and HR would belong to Margaret's parents, Thomas Walker and Helen Rennie. The WR and MS might belong to her maternal grandparents, William Rennie and Margaret Shepherd. But this is a guess because it seems likely, but I could not find a record of any children born to that couple. Now, the Mrs. MR and Mrs. EK, no idea. So maybe her teachers. At first glance, as we said, it seems like a very basic red and green wool Scottish sampler. But when you look, you see uppercase cross stitch over 2 alphabet. Margaret has stitched uppercase alphabets with 4-sided stitch and Algerian eyelet stitch, and cross stitch over 2 with double running curlicues around all the letters. She has the lowercase alphabet stitched over 1 in cross stitch, 6 bands of cross stitch over 2 patterns, bands of herringbone, Algerian eyelet, 3 bands with combinations of cross stitch and double running. Her strawberry border is cross stitch over 2, but she added double running curlicues to it. So if you know the Scottish identification clues, red and green wool, family initials under crowns, and the best clue, she told me where she lived. Thank you. I searched for Cloybank and discovered that it is the name of an estate in the general area of the city of Falkirk in this county of Stirlingshire. Still can't believe that I was actually there a few months ago. So it's so interesting that she lived on this estate, because now, let's see, what did I say? It is a big place that offers shooting. It's like a gun club. They have fishing events, and they have all kinds of activities for children, like summer camps for children going on there. And they're also selling plots of land so you can build on the Cloybank estate. So interesting. So Margaret was born June 21st, 1829, which was almost 1 year to the date after her parents Thomas Walker and Helen Rennie were married June 17th, 1828. Again, I found this easily, but I could not find another thing about Margaret Walker or her parents. So let me show you Margaret again. There she is. See the family initials? Or, I'm not sure all of them are family, but the first two are her parents, William and Helen. And then the simplicity of the design, but as you look more closely, you see that this child, oh my gosh, this 8-year-old little girl was learning complex stitches as she did this very simple looking sampler on an uneven weave rucksack-like material. So that is one Scottish sampler. Now let me put her in a safe spot. Charlie's still under here. So let's look at another Scottish sampler. And then I'm going to show you Heartbeat, a sampler that I was absolutely gobsmacked by and tried not to buy, but I did, and I'm so glad that I did. But let's look at another Scottish sampler. Okay, this sampler is another Scottish Ten Commandments sampler. I shouldn't say another, because that one was one, but I have another one up here and more in the back hall. This was made by Isabella Edmond, and she told me that she lived in Aberdeen. Thank you, Isabella. And that was in 1777 that she made this sampler. And so interesting. Most of the Scottish samplers that I have use the same metered rhyme. And this one says at the top, the Ten Commandments in meter, M-E-E-T-E-R. Have thou no other gods but me, unto no image bow thy knee. Take not the name of God in vain, do not the Sabbath day profane. Honor thy father and mother too, and see that thou no murder do. From whoredom keep thee chaste and clean, and steal not, though thy state be mean. Of false report bear not the blot, what is thy neighbor's covet not. And that same metered rhyme is on several of my Scottish samplers, but not all. So when you look at this sampler, I want you to see that the selvages indicate that it is on the wool even weave fabric boot cloth, and you'll see flat-topped A, prominent initials with curlicues all around them. You'll see that 5-flower arrangement, that's a Scottish sampler identification clue. And love that she put the Queen Stitch strawberries on this. But she has, you always look for a combination of clues. And so there are several that Isabella put in her sampler. Here it is. So, flat-topped A in the alphabet, curlicues around large letters, the 5-flower arrangement. This one has a tulip in the center with 2 flowers on each side going up diagonally and 2 going down were diagonally. So there are lots of tips that Isabella was Scottish, including she kindly told us that she is from Aberdeen. So, and I'm showing you this sampler because I want to compare it and the clues in it and Margaret's sampler with this one. Now, I really wasn't looking at samplers. I thought, okay, no more looking. You really don't need to buy more samplers. And then my friend Rebecca had seen a sampler that she was interested in, and she asked me to look at it. Well, I did, and it was a lovely sampler, and I bid on it, and I thought, oh, no, this is the one Rebecca wanted, so I didn't, and I wish I had, because she didn't get it. She didn't even bid on it, and it went for a low price. But anyway, while I was out there in the world looking at samplers, a sampler popped up, and I thought, oh my gosh, I had only seen a sampler like this in this book. I hope you have it. Remember Now Thy Creator. It's a wonderful, wonderful book by Naomi E.A. Tarrant. And a Scottish Girls Sampler, 1700 to 1872. So much wonderful information in here and lots of beautiful color pictures like these two. So these are Scottish samplers. And let's see, Jean Murray's was made in, what did it say? 1740, I think. And then Grizel Henderson's, so interesting. I have a sampler whose was made by a Grizel, and I had never noticed another one until this one. So Grizel made hers in 1801, so they're about 60 years difference between these two. 1740 for the one with the prominently blue castle, and then 1801 for the larger one. I'll show you again. Look closely because you're going to see this again. Now, Naomi, in her analysis here, has questioned why there was 60 years difference between these two samplers, and also, was there a recurrence in teaching? They're so alike, they could have been done with the same teacher, except it would be unusual for a same school to be still going and teaching the same sampler for 60 years. I really need to get out my magnification glass and compare the 10 Commandments that are within each of these cartouches. And just, I'm sure you know that three-peaked castle with the gent in front is possibly a rendition that's supposed to be Linlithgow Castle in Scotland, where Mary Queen of Scots was born, and kind of a Jacobite tradition to hold things dear even when it was no longer allowed. Of course, in 1740, the Battle of Culloden had not happened yet. It happened like, 6 years later. But anyway, I don't know why these two samplers were made 1740 and then 1801, but look at this. The nice thing is those samplers gave the name of the stitcher. I really tried to look away, and then I decided I would be crazy if I did. And the reason that I'm showing this to you now is because I've been in touch with Julia Brennan, and this wonderful sampler deserves her care, and I will be sending it to her in a few days. So I have to say that I nearly had a heart attack. We've had so much rain in January, and when this arrived from the UK, the outer wrapping was totally taped, but when I opened the paper covering, it had that corrugated, cardboardy kind of stuff all wrapped around it, and there were huge wet spots on it. So somehow the rain had gotten in. But as I unrolled it, with my heart beating like this, there were several layers of bubble wrap around it that protected the sampler, thank goodness. The thing that was concerning next was the sampler is tacked to an inner frame board. I'll show you in a sec. But the sampler was sitting right flat against the glass, and the glass was loose. So I thought, okay, I'm definitely going to have to take this apart. So here's the sampler. Yay, and since there's no glass, there's no glare. Now, my sampler actually tells that that lower building is the Tower of London. The castle is the one that often represents Linlithgow Castle, where Mary, Queen of Scots, and her father, who is the King James of the King James Bible, by the way, in spite of having, gosh, I've forgotten how many, 9 or more illegitimate children, who he raised, so that's good. Anyway, I guess he wanted to redeem himself, and so he sponsored the King James Version of the Bible. But back to the sampler. So I'll give you a really close look. You see the arcaded band that's so often seen on Scottish samplers at the top, twisted stems, reverse flowers. And then there's the Scottish fir tree. There's a little black dog chasing rabbits. I read that that is like sin, you know, chasing the rabbits. I don't know, but I love that. And I usually see this on later samplers. So the fir tree is the most common Scottish identification clue that I see. There you have the single flower in a vase. It had pink handles, but they're gone. But that is a Scottish identification clue. Let's see, you see initials with curlicues around them. And here we have the 10 Commandments in cartouches, just like on the other samplers in the book. Do you see this tree? It's so interesting. The tree on this side, you can see all the back stitches, but you see there are no flowers or berries on it. This side has the same tree, but it has blossoms on it. Isn't that interesting? So who made this? Good question. Now you see here at the bottom, there are all kinds of initials. And there's the thistle, and it says, on that side, it says, I have power to defend myself and others, which is a Scottish motto. And then the rose on the other side, it's an English rose, but let's see, Mary, Queen of Scots, is it her grandmother or great-grandmother was Margaret Tudor, Henry VIII's sister, who married a Scottish king, and that's why Mary, Queen of Scots, had a right to the throne, which got her into deathly trouble. But anyway, so it might be the Tudor rose. I'll have to look at that. But you can see there's staining on this beautiful sampler. So that needs to be, it needs some help. And let me see if I can get, okay, Is it this one? Yes. It tells me that the person who made it was 17 years old in 1814. And she has the 10 Commandments with some misspellings, which are not on my other Scottish samplers. But then she also says, let's see. Okay, let's see. What is thy neighbor's, dare not covet. Thou my soul, love God above, and as thyself, thy neighbor love. Be to others kind and true, as you would have others do to you. Now in the heat of youthful blood, remember your Creator God. Should the months come hastening on, when thou shalt say, my joys are gone. And then it has straight line with initials IA, another in magenta. There's an IA within 2 magenta lines, and then it looks like an FA, and then age 17 years, 1814. So she's not telling me who she was, is my point. Now, construction-wise, you can see the sampler is hand-stitched to a piece of muslin, and then there's another piece of muslin tacked on, and there's an inner board all around here. This outer piece is absolutely filthy. I'm looking forward to seeing what Julia thinks. And I admit, I just really wanted to see the colors on the back side. This sampler, at some point in its history, see if I can find a spot, was tacked to strengthen weak spots in the linen, tacked through the linen with tiny stitches to the muslin on the back. Can you see that? There's a spot there under the rose. So I don't know how they're going to clean this, if they'll undo those stitches and take it off the filthy muslin or what. But anyway, so here are the tacking stitches you can see along the edge, except over here, I very, very carefully undid a corner. I didn't disturb any of the tacking. Do you want to see? Okay. See if I can do it without hurting anything. Look. There's a light pink in the center of the thistle. It's very magenta, and there are blues and pale yellow and creams and a chartreuse in the vine. Isn't that beautiful? Oh, and a pale, pale blue. Let's see. Oops. A pale blue for some of the initials. That's not showing up very well. Anyway, so the amazing thing to me is, in spite of this wonderful sampler being smushed right up against the glass and the glass being loose in the frame to allow dirt in, the silks are just aglow. I don't know if you can see it, but look at that little man. He has such knobby knees. So there's Linlithgow Castle with a rooster on top or some sort of bird, and then 2 little dogs that are leashed to the stairs, and that little fella on the steps, and then there's a front lawn, and there's a little dog, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sheep. Someone said, oh my gosh, Are the sheep standing on top of the Tower of London? No, they're standing in the front lawn of the castle. But look, see that J? Okay, here's another question. Parents' initials are usually very easy to see. But here we've got two big initials ending in O on top of the castle. And then we have J-O. Isn't that a pretty J? My name is J-N. Starts with a J. I'm always looking for pretty J's. I guess it could be an I, but either I or J-O and then I-A. So I would think the bottom ones would be the parents, but there's the IA up on top. The little IA right before age 17 years, 1814. So it's a mystery. And I look forward to learning all that I can about this sampler. And really, I'm just thrilled that it has come into my possession. I'm not looking forward to the restoration of it, but now I'm not looking at samplers. I'm not looking, no more looking for a long, long time. But I wanted to share this beautiful sampler with you. Julia is very busy working with several museums on exhibits, so for the next few months, but I wanted to go ahead and get it to her so she can do an analysis and then hopefully be working on it. It's fascinating. They tell you exactly what they're going to do. One of my samplers, oh gosh, Grizel Miller, fell out of the frame and all these 200-year-old bugs fell out. Oh, it was a sad situation. But they test it to see what will work best in cleaning the sampler without damaging it. And they sponge cleaned that one, and she sent me a picture of all these tiny, filthy, dirty sponges that they had used. So it's fascinating to see what all they go through to analyze the materials and see what will work best. So I look forward to learning that. Well, that's all I wanted to share with you today. I wish you a very happy February. Spring is coming. Yay. I would love to have one good snow. I live in North Carolina. We had only a trace of snow. I think I saw 3 snowflakes all of last year. So my grandchildren would really love a good day to sled. But we'll see. It's only early February, so it could still happen. Again, I'm Sissy Bailey Smith. If you have any questions, you can email me at cissy2449 at gmail.com. Usually I tell you what I'm working on, but I'm working on one. Whoops, Charlie. Uh-oh. Sorry about that. One thing that's kind of a secret until Nicola announces it. And then I'm working on a wonderful project that's Christmas Wishes, which will be a big book with a pocket, and it has beautiful accessories. And then I have a Quaker teaching piece as well on my boards, and I'm charting samplers. And so, you know, I'm staying busy, of course, with family around and helping with my grandchildren. I have plenty to do, and I love structure, so that's a good thing. Well, let me go, but again, thank you for listening. I really appreciate it, and I am just delighted. I've had the best time on Zoom. I was with the Northwest Sampler Guild last weekend. Oh my goodness, they have so much going on. I'm going to be teaching a class, in 2 weeks. Here from my living room, and I'll be traveling to Indianapolis in person in April, and I'll be in Virginia in person and then on Zoom in several different places. So I do love sharing my love of needlework and my passion for research and Scottish samplers. And I appreciate that you enjoy them too. Thank you so much. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.